KFIZ News Time, 8:24. We are back. This is Landscape Smart, brought to you by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. Ron Rademann himself is present. Delores, Master Gardener, is present. And we are waiting for your calls. Lawn, garden, landscaping, planning, whatever, seeding, fertilizing, whatever your question is. 923-1450, 1-888-900-1450, or via email at kfizstudio@gmail.com. So you're open till 4. What time do you open in the morning? I was going to ask that, but the commercial started.
Somewhere's around 6:30 or 7.
Oh, when most people are coffeeing.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about the beginning part as much as the end part. We don't get but if you do want to come out and pick up, some shredded bark mulch or,
It's a season for actually
screenings to
doing
fix
some
the
of that.
potholes in your driveway.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that. We are open for loading and purchasing materials like that at 7 o'clock. We don't really have the landscape advisors in quite that early, yet
But the yard guys are there.
Yeah, the other guys are there. 8 o'clock is typically when the other guys kind of, the landscape people that want to help you with your gardening questions. But we're usually, now on Saturdays, at 6:30 in the morning, they're lined up, to pick up shredded black dirt and things like that. But typically during...
But not yet.
But no, not this. Don't go this morning.
Yeah.
You'll be turning around.
Yeah, you'll be there by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a good time? I mean, people had the winter months to think about stuff. Is it a good time to visit with the planners now? And if you're thinking about a patio or thinking about an upgrade or thinking about different stones or blocks or whatever, is it a good time to go out there and chat with the guys?
Well, and it's almost getting a little late, for that part of it.
So it is a good time.
So, yeah, you want to get on that real quick, because if you stop out to Rademann's right now and meet with Joe, is pretty much the best one for that. We have a few other people around Rademann's that can help you too, but Joe has worked he actually did installations of patios and block walls and did natural stone work and things like that.
First-hand knowledge.
Yeah, so he's got 20 years of experience of doing it, so he's kind of, and he did it with one of Rademann's customers through the years. So he's been around the area and did different soils, different terrains, different things like that. So he kind of, when you walk in there, he's going to ask you a bunch of questions before he's going to give you any answers, kind of like what we do on the show here, because there's 2 or 3 right answers in a lot of cases, depending on each situation. But yeah, you want to, and that way you can kind of pick out your product, and he can advise you as to which if you want to tackle it yourself, that's fine. Or if you don't want to tackle it yourself, he can tell you which one of our installers, landscape contractors would be the best at it. Because we have some of our customers, our landscape installers that buy from us, they only buy like natural stone, flagstone and outcropping limestone, things like that. And some only like to, work with the concrete and the different natural, the man-made products,
right.
you
But you have so much out there. If you're thinking about doing it, you should go out and just look it all over and decide what you want to put in.
Yeah, and that way you can decide, and
Right.
if you you can call the contractors up, and some can do both equally well. Mm-hmm. Some are just better at certain things because that's what they like to use, and their installers are used to using it. So it's good to you're going to get an unbiased opinion from Rademann's because they're all our customers. So we're going to try to pick the one that's going to do best for you and do the best job for whatever you choose, whatever you like, whatever you're, if it's more of a natural landscape or more of a formal look, or, depending on what you're what you're looking for. So that's why it really works out well. But these contractors are also, they've been signing up contracts all year long from back in November and December all the way through. So if you go out to Rademann's right now and we suggest, calling, a contractor or 2 contractors or 3, you might be on a waiting list right now. It might be June, July, August before before you get lined up to get the work in. So
Alrighty. We've got a caller. Good morning. You are on Landscape Smart.
Good morning. I have a question. I have a really big linden tree, and it's a big one, and I want to plant a miniature fruit tree. How far away do we have to be away from that tree? And we have power lines and stuff too.
Well, fruit trees, you have to be a little bit careful because they need pretty much full sun, because if you plant them and they're getting shade, you're going to end up with mildew and some of the fungus issue problems. So if you can plant it on like the west or the southwest side of your linden, that would be the best, because that way it would get that,
Full afternoon
it would
sun
get that full afternoon sun.
and the heat.
And the heat, yeah. So it would be, if you can get it on the west side or the south side or the southwest side, that would be ideal. And then you could probably be as close as, 20 feet or 25 feet away. I don't know that I would go any closer than 20, because
Okay, it's a really old tree. It's probably over 25 years old. It's old. So what about the roots?
well, you're going to run into some roots as you dig out into that area, but that part, they'll coexist there. I'd be more concerned about, the roots, they'll figure it out. Trees are smarter than we give them credit for, but some problems they can't solve. But the root problem, they would be able to, they'd commingle with there. You'd be okay as long as you were 20 feet away. You'd might.
What about the best fruit tree? Because we either want an apple, pear. What would be best? I mean, we'll take anything, but and I want a small one. I don't want a real big one. A miniature tree.
Well,
and how tall do they get?
Yeah, and pear trees are kind of
They're tall.
the structure and the form of a pear tree is like a pear. They're shaped like a pear, so they're going to get taller than an apple tree. And even certain varieties of apple, apple trees aren't all the same either. Some are more of a rounded form, and some are more of a oval form. So kind of watch for that. You want to be careful. I would pick out a newer variety of apple that's a little more disease resistant. Some of the older common ones are susceptible to some of the funguses and things like that. And Honeycrisp is actually a rather difficult apple to grow. So if you're going to have one apple tree in your yard, I wouldn't really recommend Honeycrisp. It's the reason Honeycrisp apples are so expensive at the store. It's not because they're rare. It's because it's hard to have a nice clean apple, because they're a little bit prone to disease problems and insect problems. So Honeycrisp would not be one that I would recommend. And but with that in mind, Snow Sweet is a good one, and then if you just look for something that's dwarf or at least semi-dwarf, that'll get you something that's going to be more in that 12 to 15 foot height and spread.
Most of the apple trees today are grafted onto a dwarf.
Are they?
Yes. And I have 4 types of apples. They all get about the same height, but you always want to trim off the suckers that go straight up. Water spouts, I think they call them.
Yeah.
And you want to keep them at bay in the winter, cut them back. And I have...
This would be a good time to trim those out.
Definitely,
right now.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have
How tall is
Honeycrisp.
tall?
Well, most of those that are dwarf, it's hard to find a true dwarf
Right.
in Fond du Lac,
But
because
they
most
do.
people's yards are pretty big. So you're gonna, but a semi dwarf would be more in the 12-foot height, 12-foot across. That's and it takes quite a few years, and you can
But you trim off the top.
Yeah.
You trim
Right,
it back
right.
so
Right,
that
you-
you can pick low.
trim those
Okay.
upper branches when they fork. Trim out the higher one, leave the lower one, or the
Right.
one that's growing more horizontally.
Right.
And
Now, another question is, how do you plant it? Do you guys come over and plant it for us?
well, we don't actually have planting crews at Rademann's, so
Okay.
but if you would go to, are you from the Fond du Lac area?
Yeah, we're in North Fond du Lac.
Sure. Then, if you would go actually North Fond du Lac, I would maybe go out to Stewart's. They would
Okay.
have a good selection of semi-dwarf or maybe even dwarf apple trees. Now, a dwarf pear tree is still going to be pretty big. So I'd probably go more with the apple than the pear.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and typically, now it's going to tell you you're going to need a pollinator for an apple tree too. But if you're in town and North Fond du Lac qualifies as being in town, there's probably other flowering crab apples around that would cross pollinate your apple
Oh,
tree
okay.
for you. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that part of it.
Okay.
But
Well, thank you so much.
But I think I would recommend going to Stewart's, and because they would have a great selection of different apple trees, fruit trees that
Yeah.
in stock. I'm sure
Right.
at this time of year.
Yeah, I have
So-
4 apple trees, and they're about 8 years old now. And the best tasting pie apple I think I've ever tasted is my Taylor Rome. But I tell you, it was covered in fungus last year. Probably 3 different kinds. And then I had Macintosh, and that wasn't too touchy, but that really just makes good applesauce. They're very mushy when you cook them. And my Golden Delicious was probably the best last year for disease resistant. And my Honey Crisp gets nice big apples, but if you don't pick them fast enough, those yellow jackets just love them. So,
Wow.
there's problems with every apple. So you just have
Well,
to.
some of these newer varieties are just better than others, and if
Right.
you're doing your research on apples, kind of keep in mind that you want to go to a university website
Right.
or a arboretum website rather than a commercial grower's website, because if you go to certain theirs are always the best.
Right.
If you go to
University will tell you the results of their testing.
right, and they're going to be unbiased
Yes.
as compared to if you go to a site that specializes.
Right.
If you go to look at like Jung's, or you would go to Stark or some of those.
Right.
Those places are going to be biased towards their
Right.
varieties of
Right.
apples.
They're good people, but you might not get what you want
Right.
in the
Well,
long
thank
run.
you so much with the information. I learned a lot.
So
Good luck with your project.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank you.
take care, and thanks for the call. Lines open, 923-1450, 1-888-900-1450, via email, kfizstudio@gmail.com. I'm monitoring the email, so
Well, in the the question where she first started out was, if you're in apple trees, generally you want to get those out away from your into a far corner of your property where it's wide open, they get a lot of air circulation, full sunlight,
Well, the best thing about a west location is that prevailing west wind.
right, they're going to keep that foliage dry.
Right. Last year it was so wet for so long, and that was my biggest problem. There's no way to dry them out when it was just rain,
And if
until,
there's
October,
and if there's
August.
slope to your property, put them on the slopier part. If you kind of think about where do you find apple orchards? You
They're
find apple orchards all on hillsides and kind of almost the poorest soils, so to speak. If you want to grow good corn, you grow it in one field. If you want to grow good apple trees, you grow it in a different field. And apple trees like that. And that's why, the Little Farmer and places like that, they're up on the ledge. And if you think about that, that's, they've got that west exposure.
Right.
The winds are blowing across Lake Winnebago and blowing up the hill, and they're getting that full sun all afternoon. Where the most successful apple orchards are, you want to emulate them and do what they do. You aren't going to. Square pegs and round holes don't work with fruit trees. You'll be frustrated.
Well, any kind of gardening.
Right. That's true.
All right, let's take break number 2.
So break number 2. Again, Rademann's just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac. Easiest way to get there is to take Highway 41 and exit off of County B to the east, and we're right there at the crest of the hill, just about a quarter mile from 41. Don't go there today. You'll be there by yourself. But Monday through Friday right now till 4 o'clock would be great time.
And as simple as that, we are back to Landscape Smart, brought to you by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company. Ron Rademann here, Delores, Master Gardener here. Lines are open, 923-1450, 1-888-900-1450. Just a reminder, we can only handle one incoming call at a time. I can't go to another call and put you on hold. So if you've got a caller on the air, as soon as that caller hangs up, then call in. Or you can get a hold of us at kfizstudio@gmail.com. And there's another way to hear this program, Ron.
Well, if you're tuning in late and you missed the first half hour or so of the show, you can go back on YouTube. Cody, he works on it usually on Saturday afternoons or Sundays, so you can't go in and watch it or listen to it right after the show. You have to wait it out just a little bit. But you can search for Landscape Smart 25, as in 2025, the year. So Landscape Smart 25, and you'll be able to, listen to this week's show or last week's or our first show in March, whichever one you want to listen back to. You could, if you end up in Landscape Smart 24, which was last year, you kind of, it's maybe interesting, but you can't always follow what we talk about, because last year at this time of year, we were in the 60s and 70s, and this year
It's cooler.
It's cooler, we're going to get as many days below freezing overnight as we are above freezing here as I look at the 10-day outlook. So, this year, the March, beginning of April, end of March is a little bit different than last year. So it might be interesting to listen to last year's shows.
Just to see how we enjoyed last year.
Just to see what is different about it. But you can't listen to the first week of April's shows of last year and follow the same advice we're going to give you this year. So, because it's going to be different, because we're going to get freezing temperatures. I don't know if 5 or 6 out of the next 10 or 12 days, it's going to be down into the,
it's going to be April.
Mid-20s yet. So we're last year, we were pretty much, as it turned out, we were done with the freezing temperatures already last year. This year, a little bit different.
Welcome to Wisconsin.
Just never know.
You just never know, and sometimes the same day.
Yeah. Well, yesterday was a typical example when we were running around in our short sleeve T-shirts and 70 degrees and I don't know, 38 or 37 when I peeked out first thing this morning around here. So
yeah, it was fresh. And I grabbed a spring jacket instead of my winter jacket because that's what I should have grabbed this morning. 923-1450. Lines are open. If you have a question for Ron, for Delores, for both of them, give a shout. Again, the email address, kfizstudio@gmail.com. We've talked in the past about...
Let me just go back to that one more time. You can actually subscribe to the show, too.
Really?
And then you'll get a notification that it's up and ready to listen to. And a lot of times, I mean, you can watch if you want. There isn't much to watch. But
Us.
Yeah.
Us.
About as bad as it gets.
There's a reason this is radio.
We're a lot more fun to listen to than to watch, I think. But then you can turn it on and listen to it on Saturday night or Sunday, whenever, because you'll get notified when it's up and available. So
That's a good service.
So yeah,
That's nice.
So go ahead and subscribe to us.
And how do you do that?
Well,
Good
when you
question.
go on YouTube and you're watching it, it'll tell you. It'll tell you how, or ask
Okay.
you if you want to subscribe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought somebody may want to know how, so that's why I asked.
Yeah. Well,
Inquiring minds.
yeah. Well, it's easier to do it when you're doing it like anything else, and when you're in the middle of listening to it or doing it, rather than trying to do it if you're not doing it. So
First, you have
Know what
to
I
Say
mean?
that
find it.
again.
kind of like gardening,
Yeah.
923-1450. Lines are open. We've got about 13 minutes left, so give a shout if you got a question.
How do you hoe the garden? Well, once you got the hoe in your hand and you're out there hoeing, it's a lot easier to figure it out than for us to explain it on the air.
Right.
Good point.
Right.
Good point.
So YouTube and as are most things on the internet, but it's pretty simple actually. And once you get on Landscape Smart 25, it'll work for you.
So that's the key. Remember that. Landscape Smart 25.
Well, the Master Gardener plant sale is coming up on May 10th, and if you're starting to plan your garden, you can start your list of what kinds of plants you'd like to buy. We have many varieties of tomatoes. I really don't know how many Margie has planted in the greenhouse, but I myself have 15 varieties planted at my house just for my friends, and I know I will have extras. So a few of those extras will be
It's
coming.
a lot of varieties of tomatoes.
I was going to say, what do you do with that many different varieties of tomatoes?
I had a catalog once, and it was really outdated because it was only 400 varieties.
Seriously.
Some of those were more for Florida because they took over 120 days to ripen. But we need something that is less. The bigger the tomato, the longer it takes. Like the brandy wines and the beef steaks all take, they say 89 days. Well, the 4th of July, you pick a tomato 4th of July last year.
Last year.
Last year, yeah. And they're
This year
about,
you're not.
they're about a 2.5 inch tomato. It's small, but very, very tasty. And so the smaller the tomato, the sooner you will get some. So if you're a tomato lover, but you like those big juicy ones, plant some smaller ones so you have something to eat while
Earlier.
you're waiting for the big ones. Like the little cherries. There's a large cherry that gets about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches. And then there's the Campari. They get about 2 inches. There's a yellow pear. There's a red pear, sun gold. There's several different varieties of gold. And I love my sun gold. It tastes almost like mango. That's so close to a peachy taste. It's lots of good varieties out there.
Interesting. I didn't realize. I think, you go to the garden sale and you see a bunch of varieties, but you don't realize that's only a minute percentage of what's out there.
Well,
It's
and
just nothing.
The early ones, it seems like, you're always anxious for the first tomatoes, the first fresh tomatoes right out of the garden.
I've never gone
then
without
as-
early girls.
And then you kind of get into, by the time you get into the September ones, well, who cares by then? You're sick of tomatoes. You're onto something else.
Yeah,
by
it may be
then.
a beefsteak and it may be 1.5 pounds, but
Yeah, I've had
Can it?
yeah. Or
So-
one slice cover as a toast for BLT.
That's
923-1450, 1-888-900-1450. Third break.
All right. Rademann's, again, as we said, not open today, Saturday. But if you're listening on YouTube and it's a Monday, then you can go out to Rademann's. But anyway, Rademann's not open yet on Saturdays. We are open Monday through Friday till 4, and we're just 3 miles south of Fond du Lac, just east of 41 on County B, or give us a call or look us up online.
And we are back for the remaining few minutes of Landscape Smart, brought to you by Rademann Stone and Landscape Company, 923-1450, 1-888-900-1450. Online, it's kfizstudio@gmail.com. For an email, we'll take your questions either way. So the question I have is, we talked last week, I think it was, about aeration. Do you do that when the soil is soft, or do you wait for it to get harder and then aerate? What's your recommendation?
Well, you just don't want it muddy, but so you want to make sure that there's no frost in the ground or frost coming out yet.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure the snow is gone. Make sure it's dry, dry enough, and you can aerate in the fall too, and then put your winterizer down. But if you didn't aerate in the fall, then the second best time to aerate is right now. Or again, we're maybe a little bit early because we have to just we got to get a little dry weather here yet.
Mm-hmm.
But the spring can be a tight window, because if it's too wet and then all of a sudden the grass starts to grow and it starts greening up, you've kind of missed your opportunity. So usually it's easier to do it in the fall. But, if you didn't do it in the fall, it's better to do it now than wait until fall. You can do it again in the fall. But if it's wet or, mushy, or a lot of times it's, you end up with wet parts of your lawn.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be dry in some areas and still wet in others. And that's the trickiest part, about it is
most lots are not level.
Right. It takes a little while for it to dry out completely. And a lot of times by then it's getting a little late because things are starting to green up.
And should aeration be an annual event or semi-annual or biennial, or what's the recommendation? Or does it depend on your dirt?
It depends on your soil. If you've got a sandier soil, it isn't as important. And if you mow with a hand mower rather than a big heavy riding tractor, that you go out and mow in the spring with that, and you're compacting it. Mm-hmm. So most, like a golf course, they pretty much aerate every year, but they get a lot of traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not only mowing, but there's golf carts driving around on
and a few divots. Aren't divots aeration?
Well, that's a little bit different. Yeah.
Compacting.
But that's why, golf courses end up aerating every year, because they, there's a lot of vehicular traffic on there, and golfers, they want to golf. They aren't going to wait for a hot sunny day where it's real dry to go out and golf. They want to golf right now for the, and get out there and get started. So anyway, that's kind of one of the reasons they aerate mostly in the fall. And then you can put your winterizer down right after that, and it soaks in real good. You can kind of get ready for, step one here right now. Even though we're getting temperatures below freezing overnight, we're not really getting frost in the ground, at least where there's grass. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have open dirt, that might freeze if you get overnight temperatures, but typically you're not putting fertilizer down or step one down on dirt. You're putting it on grass. And when we get a night that dips below freezing, you're not getting frost put in the ground. So you could pretty much go ahead with step one anytime now. So, or at least be getting ready for it. Sometimes all of a sudden you get that warm week and and you miss your opportunity. But it doesn't look like we're going to get that here. The 10-day outlook looks pretty like a slow moving spring. So
it's going to be a while too then before we're seeding the open patchy areas too, I suppose, given the forecast.
yeah, you know, and you could start seeding now, but nothing's going to really germinate yet, because when we're getting those freezing temperatures overnight, the soil temperatures just aren't warm enough for grass to germinate. But if you put the seed down now, it'll be there in a couple weeks when it does warm up and start to grow. So again, the best time to do it is when you have time. If you have more time to do it properly right now, it's better to do it now than wait 2 weeks when you don't have time and you're rushing and you're trying to do too many other things at once, when you think, oh man, I gotta mow and I gotta get my windows cleaned and I gotta gotta start getting the garden ready and all these other things. Well, then you're better off getting the seed down now, because some things you can bend the season backwards and forward a little bit more so than others.
It's amazing how that to-do list modifies itself exponentially as spring comes.
Well, and we get a lot of that is when is the best time? Well, for a lot of things, the best time, there isn't enough hours in the day to do the best time. So you have to pick the second best time in a lot of cases, or not pick the wrong time. So, those are, so, we can always tell you the best time, but we can always tell you the second best time too.
Which may be your personal best time.
Right. And that's where it is for me personally, is I pick the best time I have available.
That's all you can do. Artie, thank you both. Delores, thank you so much for your wisdom and your inspiration. And Ron, of course.
Yep, we'll be back next Saturday morning. Rademann's not open on Saturdays yet. We are open Monday through Friday till 4:00. So listen to us on YouTube. Landscape Smart 25.
There you go. Simple as that.